Is it on?
Yep, whenever you're ready.
Good evening. I'm Kerrilynne Refutation. Tonight I'm going to be refuting a speech that you heard a couple weeks ago in defense of the proposition that human consumption of animal product is a leading cause of the drought. I will do this through two main efforts. First of all, I will reference leading research groups that show several other factors as being a leading cause of the drought and do not include human consumption in any way at all. I will secondly show that the supporting points as well as the proposition itself are misleading in their wording and lack proper empirical evidence. Together, these efforts will show that the proposition merely shows a misuse of water resources and fails to connect human consumption patterns at all to the drought. First of all, in thinking about the drought, it's necessary to think about climate patterns. So leading scientific groups, including NASA, the United States Geological Survey, and the National Oceanic Atmosphere Administration, agree that climate change is the leading cause of the drought. Therefore, by default, livestock or human consumption of animal products cannot be the leading cause. My point A on this claim is that the NASA Earth Observatory notes that there are, generally speaking, three main contributors to the drought. First, land and sea surface temperatures. Second, atmospheric circulation patterns. And third, soil moisture content. While soil moisture content might have impacts factored by livestock or animal products, it's not directly a cause of the drought, but I'll discuss that more later. My point B on this claim is that the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, or the NOAA, reports in a comparative study about the 2011 to 2014 drought that no substantial effect of human-induced climate change on the severe precipitation deficits over California could be found. They instead elaborate that in general, the dry California winters are caused by a ridge near and off the west coast that appears as a wave train, which is basically just tropic patterns in weather, something that can't be controlled by human eating patterns. So that concludes my first point about the scientific evidence in refutation of the initial claim. My second point is not that the content of the original speech was entirely fallacious, but rather that the proposition as stated and its points are misleading and lack supporting evidence. The initial claims were only two of them. First, that animal agriculture uses excessive amounts of water, and secondly, that dairy products consume vast amounts of water. So the first point was supported by a statement from the United States Department of Agriculture that suggested that agriculture accounts for approximately 80 to 90% of U.S. consumptive water use. However, the speaker failed to mention that consumptive use estimates may or may not account for associated system efficiency losses, for example, evaporation, deep percolation, and runoff. Secondly, the first claim is misleading in that it states that animal agriculture uses excessive amounts of water when the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences instead reports that Food and Agriculture Organization found the animal agriculture sector emits only 18% or 1/5 of the emissions that contribute to climate patterns, and they only use less than 38% of actual water irrigation. So while the United States Geological Survey reports that So in refutation of these points, the United States Geological Survey reports that livestock withdrawals accounted for about 1% of total freshwater withdrawals, excluding thermoelectric power, which means that of all the irrigation used, livestock withdrawals were less than 1%. So that 80 to 90% of consumptive water is within the 1% of withdrawals. So Altogether, my evidence suggests that human consumption of animal products, more specifically the activities of the livestock and agriculture industries, while having an effect on the underground water sources and potentially contributing to greenhouse gas emissions, are simply misuse of the water resources that we have intact, so that in circumstances of drought, we don't have further issues. They do not show that consumptive patterns are a leading cause of the drought. With that, I'm complete. Thank you.
All right, you ID the main claim pretty clearly. You present a preview of what your claims are going to be. Your first argument is all a big counterclaim, and I thought you did a very good job developing a counter-causality argument, explaining why there are other things that are related to this. Although your A and the B point are almost contradictory, because the first one says that, part of it says that, well, the changes in this might be a result of climate issues, and the second one says we didn't find any climate issue that's going on there, it's really this other thing. So I like both ideas. Potentially they contradict each other, but I can see how they both apply to the argument that's being presented here. So if we were having a debate, I would expect that the response speaker would maybe make some argument about that, about whether or not you're being consistent on your position, and then you might have to explain it a little bit more. But as it is, that's as far as it's going for this particular assignment. And I thought that that was very clearly applicable to the argument that's being presented. And then your explanation of on the second point is really an analysis of how water is being utilized, and kind of a debunking of the statistic that the advocate presented about consumptive water. And I thought you had excellent information on that, very clear explanations. And you've got that one piece of argument at the end that says that it represents less than 1% of the freshwater diversions that we're talking about. So in essence, you've kind of diminished it out of any particular significance and put it into a context. I think that there's a good argument that you're making there at the end. It would be easy to summarize. It says, look, there's no argument that sometimes water gets wasted, that we utilize a lot of water, but there's a lot more water that's out there that they didn't account for in their argument, and the percentage that is being used for this is so minimally small as to be almost negligible. And I thought you did a good job explaining that. All right, thank you.